Anybody who is a son must have gone through the chastening of the Lord. He said, if you are not bastards, he said, then will you endure the chastening of the Lord? He said, if we have earthly parents and we obey them, how much more shall we obey our Father in the spirit, that we may live? It is on that note that he said Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. When you become a son, you will discover that the rules will become rigid. When God tells you to pray and you don't pray, it will be like a sin. For you, it's no longer about prayer timetable. It's a law, because nations will depend on your prayer. The salvation of many will depend on your prayer. So for you, the altar is a place of legislation. And if you fail, it's like a lawyer that refused to go to court in the day that he should defend his client. That's a sin. It's a taboo. And so sonship entails chastisement. When we begin to grow in this corridor, you will notice that our testimonies will no longer be God gave me a car. That's for children. Our testimony is not that God healed me. No. Our testimonies will change. When you go to the meeting of the mature, our testimonies are about the encounters we were entrusted with. The Lord appeared to me yesterday and told me, pray for Zambia. And for the next 50 years of your life, that will become your purpose. Not because in the natural you are from Zambia, but because when legislations were passed in the spirit, they gave you an inheritance there. And if you are not on the altar, things will go wrong. You may never visit, but you have an inheritance there. That is for sons. Your testimony will be that for the past 10 years, the Lord sent me to this strange land. No man helped me, but I have stood by the grace of God. Our testimonies change. It's sonship. And when you err, God has the right to chastise you. It is in the corridor of sons that a man can go bankrupt for a season because he disobeyed God. It is still part of the gospel of the kingdom. And God will leave him because there are things he needs to learn. When he learns it and returns to obedience, then he will see God's mercy. You can't teach it as a doctrine, because doctrine is to mature people. When we come to maturity, it becomes about intimacies and encounters. That's when Christianity becomes personal and the path is narrow. The things you suffered here are your dealings with God, so that your soul can open to the ecosystems of Zion, and you will learn things that are ancient syllables that men can't teach. Only Spirit can teach. When Paul was speaking in 1 Corinthians 2:12-14, he said, we have not received the spirit that is of this world. He said, we have received the spirit that is of God, that we may know the things that are freely given to us by God. He said, which things we speak, not with words that human wisdom teaches. He said, but with words that the Holy Ghost teach, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. He said, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, neither can he know them. He said, they are spiritually discerned. He said, who has known the mind of the Lord, that he will instruct him? He said, but we have the mind of Christ, and so we judge all things. This is the utterance of sons. They have come into the place of precision because they have endured the chastening of the Lord. Paul was speaking in 2 Corinthians 1:8. He said, I will not forget to tell you of the sufferings that we went through in Asia. He said, the verdict of death was upon us. He said, we were despised. We even hated life. He said, but it is in it that we learned. There are things we learn when we come under trials, tribulations, and the chastening of the Lord is the badge of a son. Sons don't brag by the material things they have. When a son has to brag, he will brag by the things he has endured for God. Did you not read about Paul? He said, let me speak to you like a man. He said, concerning fasting, I fast often. He said, concerning weeping, 3 times I was flogged 39 strokes. He said, a day and a half I was in the deep. They left him in the water to die for 1.5 days. It was his perils that were his honors in the spirit. That's a son. That's his testimony. The testimony of Paul were 39 lashes 3 times, many imprisonments, being left in the water to die. Who is that? Is that a Christian? If they take that kind of testimony here, you will not even be happy. You won't clap hands because you will think it's not a blessing. But when sons speak, their utterances are different. They speak as servants. He said, I'm a prisoner of Christ. I understand the way of sons. That's where Jesus got to, and he was at Gethsemane. Say, if it were possible, let this cup pass me by. He said, yet not my will but thine. And he had to drink that cup. And so when the mother of James and John came to him and said, I want my sons to sit at your left and your right, he looked at him. He said, that position is for sons. Can you drink of this baptism? This baptism is death. Don't you wonder? Jesus raised 12 disciples. 11 of them died. Some were beheaded. And no one changed his mind. Because they were sons. They had matured. They know the chastening of the Lord. That's sonship. So when Jesus came as the Son of God, he came to teach us how to live. Finally, a son is one that is given. Unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. If you are not given, you cannot wield powers. Powers that subdue government. What does it mean to be given? It means you have not your will anymore. The will of God becomes your will. It is in the corridor of being given that Jesus died for you. Even up to Gethsemane, he didn't want to. But they say, not my will, but thine. This selfish generation can never know sonship. Every time we come to pray, we are looking for something. We are not given. There are many nations looking for God, but they can't find sons to give. If God gives you to Afghanistan, will you go? If he gives you to Pakistan, will you go? Everybody wants a position in White House. Everybody is looking for where it's located, because sons are lacking. When you become a son, I'm not saying Christianity will not bring you blessings, but I'm saying the verdict, like Paul, you will say, I've mastered how to abound and to abase. Anywhere God sends me, I go. I don't question his authority anymore, because I'm his son. Ask God to help us.